Hey, have you ever thought about what it would be like to go to music school? Or are you thinking about going to music school and wondering if it's worth it? Well, my name is Matt Friedland. I'm a professional musician, guitarist, bassist, and drummer. And I did go to music school. And what I wanted to share with you today was my experience, the things that I took away, so that maybe you can use those in your own decision making, whether school is worth it, or how you can use those in your journey musically. And these are just my opinions, so I hope they serve you well. So you may be thinking, okay, like what would be the purpose of going to music school? And I'll share with you what my purpose was. And I didn't start playing music until I was about 18 or 19, but I really caught the bug. But a lot of my friends in high school who played in bands and things like that actually went on to music school and they became really good. So I reached a certain level on my own, being self-taught and actually taking lessons with private teachers, but I felt like I wasn't able to really kind of reach the level that I wanted to. And a lot of the guys that I was encountering, sometimes playing with, who had gone to school were on another level. So I really wanted to be on a higher level. Musically was one of the aspirations that I had to go to school. However, I was teaching music at about age 23, and I was doing okay as a teacher, but I was around other teachers who did go to school, and I felt some of the inferiority, I guess, in some areas. And so I wanted to step up my game as a teacher so I could also support myself. So I wanted to get to the professional level. But also, I was a big fan, or I'm a big fan of many bands, but one band is the band Phish that I actually kind of got into later. I didn't really get the band early on in high school, but later I really kind of became a huge fan of the band. And what I know about the band is that those guys, Trey Anastasio and I believe John Fishman, they had met at music school. And so one of the reasons why I wanted to go to music school was I was hoping to meet other musicians that I could form, this kind of dream band scenario, and we could create this music that we all felt really passionately about and share it with the world and make records and tour and do shows and do gigs and things like that. So going to music school, I wanted to become an elite musician. I wanted to learn how to read music because that wasn't a skill that I had, but I felt was something that I needed in order to get to a higher level. I wanted to become a much more proficient improviser and understand what I was doing musically, but I really wanted to meet other, serious, dedicated musicians and make connections and really take my music to the next level. And I was already teaching to support myself, but I needed to get to another level to do it, to become a better teacher. So those are really the main reasons why I went to music school. Now, the first time that I actually auditioned for music school, I had been playing guitar for maybe about a year. I was probably about 20 years old or so. And I was like, I had, thought, well, if I go to music school, that'll be where I can learn my skills and meet other musicians and become the musician I want to be. I was not teaching. I was hardly working. I was pretty much broke. And I started taking lessons with a classical guitarist who was supposed to help me prepare for the audition at a music school in Philadelphia called the University of the Arts. And I really had no idea what was going to be involved in preparing for the audition. I was actually going to do a jazz guitar audition, and I didn't really know what I needed to know. And I just hoped that I'd show up for the audition and that the faculty would, just let me in so I could learn and I'd be a good student. And unfortunately, that wasn't the case. I couldn't really perform what they were asking me to do, and it was really kind of an embarrassment, and they basically just kicked me out of the room and said, stop wasting our time. And I was like, what am I doing? And it was a big kind of reflecting moment for me. But I went on to study with private teachers and kept moving on because I have a passion for music. But I found later, once I started teaching, the manager of the music store that I was teaching at, he had told me that he went to a community college to get his skills up, and that you should check it out. So I said, okay, that's pretty cool. I can go to a local community college. I don't need to audition, but I can gain the skills that I need, to round myself off. And I went to a community college, which I think was probably the best way to go. So if you're thinking about, music school, depends on where you are in your skill level, but you have to pass an audition to get into a university in most cases, and it depends on where your skill level is at. So if you're not at an audition, ready state, maybe the community college is the better place for you. So that's what I did. And when I got to the community college, I didn't know what I was going to do. Really, the only options were, jazz and classical. And jazz interested me because I was interested in improvisation and becoming more fluent in that regard and expressing myself, versus classical just was a different kind of thing. So when I was in school, what's it like? Well, I first got into community college and I was just taking guitar classes, and I thought that's what you had to take. And it was a total mixed bag of just people who were hobbyists who just wanted to learn, and then, some people who were more serious. We learn how to read, we learn some basic stuff, and we play, some little pieces together. But I met some of the teachers and I started to connect with them. And then I started taking, music theory classes. Now, my music theory was pretty decent going in, but I really wanted to hone in on knowing things like very firmly, like knowing my keys and scales and knowing all the stuff that's really important. And really, what I learned was really mastering intervals and how important that was. Also, the ear training classes, and really understood the method and the system and the process, and in the same time learning how to read so I could really see the music in much more detail so I could understand it. And then I started applying it right away to writing music and improvisation, any way that I could to make games out of it, to make it fun. And I really enjoyed that stuff. And then, I started getting into jazz and taking jazz improvisation classes, which in the beginning were really difficult because I was totally out of my element. I really didn't know anything about jazz, and there was kids in my classes that were more experienced and better players than me. And the teacher of that class was not very structured, so I didn't really know what to prepare, and I always felt going into the class like I have no idea what's going on, and I'm going to be thrown into some situation to play something that I don't know what I'm doing, and it was pretty uncomfortable, but I didn't know anywhere else to go to learn. So I kind of struggled through that jazz improvisation class for like 2 semesters. And it was tough, so it's like you're kind of around other musicians. As I started taking other classes, it's much more competitive. And really there's only 2 tracks, I think. It's like learning jazz or learning classical. There really isn't much in terms of like the popular music realm, at least what I found in community college, but I wanted to be a good improviser and I wanted to be a good student and be receptive to what my teachers were teaching me and really put in the work and the effort to gain the most out of it and dedicate myself to their teachings and the practice there. So seeing other players that were much better than me was definitely intimidating, but it allowed me to kind of step up and say, I want to get to the next level and, learn things about mastering the fretboard, music theory, how to arrange, and then very importantly, playing in jazz combos, which I got into in about my second year or so. And again, was like really one of the weakest links in my jazz combo. There was players in there that were much more experienced, and that was very difficult, but nobody really kind of holds your hand necessarily. They kind of give you the information, but it's really on you to step up. And it's not easy. It's not for the faint of heart, as one of my teachers told me, if you really want to push yourself through and get to the higher levels. And that's what it forced me to do. And I got some help from my teachers, but it was really on me to really step up to that next level. And it really helped me grow into a more confident musician where I really wanted to be able to jam with other musicians. And I met a bunch of musicians and guitar players and things like that, and it was really cool. And we had some connections, we'd jam. There was a lot of stuff that I learned from other guys. Some guys weren't as interested in the whole, jazz guitar track. They were just there to hone their skills, and they were more interested in playing rock and blues and, bar gigs and clubs and stuff like that. But it was cool meeting people in these different perspectives, and I even formed a band with some guys. But in the end, it was actually pretty difficult to find some substantial connections with people and to really get the band thing going that I had really dreamed about. And it was pretty uncomfortable in a lot of stages because I was a little bit older when I went to music school. I started when I was about 25, and I was in classes with like 18, 19, 20-year-olds. So that was a little bit tough for me, but there were adults at the community college that wanted to learn as well. So my thing is, like, if you really want to put the effort into it, there's a lot you can gain, but you have to really be a good student and be receptive and put in the work in the track that they're kind of giving you. And I figured I'll sort it out later once I get out of school and do my own thing, is how I perceived it. So I spent about 4.5 years at the community college and really got to the point where I was getting in command of my playing and jazz and, getting more experience playing in combos and getting much more confident. Jamming, playing more gigs, becoming a better teacher. And and things were good, but then I had to make a decision about, do I go on to the university? Because I had really exhausted the community college and everything that had to offer to me. And it was a big decision. I was like, well, if I go to the university, you're going to end up taking out student loans and, all the debt that comes with that. I asked myself, do I really need it? Do I have the skills that I can continue to be happy as a musician, or can I find my happiness as a musician to sustain myself as a teacher and, maybe find the musicians that I want to play with and be on that level? Or do I really need to go to the next level and go to school at the university level? And I remember asking my dad that question. I called him up and said, hey, Dad, I don't know what to do here. I got these things where, it's expensive on the one hand. I don't know if it's worth it to go to university, or do I have the skills to make it on my own, and what should I do? And, he basically just told me, he said, well, I'm not going to pay for it. And I was like, well, that wasn't the question. I just wanted to kind of know what your take on it was. But ultimately, I had to make the decision for myself. And I said, look, I'm going to go for it. I really think this is important. I want to be on the highest level I can be. And I'll take out the loans and I'll figure out the money later. And I went to Arizona State University. I passed the audition, and I decided to go. And when I got there, the good things that I learned was really things like, enhancing my improvisational skills, understanding how to build systems and methods for enhancing your musicality, playing with other people, higher caliber musicians, learning how to arrange, enhancing my repertoire, gaining confidence with performing. It was hard. It was definitely hard and competitive, but really it boosted all these things up for me. And learning how to put together bands and put together recitals and rehearsals and coordinate people on a higher level, which a lot of these things were like invaluable. So I'm really glad that I have these skills. And if I had the chance to do it again, I would. But I would say that you really have to have a thick skin, because people they may not be necessarily super kind to you, and you really have to work hard to get the most out of it. And you really have to buy into the system, because if you want to do something else, maybe something like Berklee would be a better option if you want to do rock or like progressive rock or funk or different styles. I went to school primarily was jazz and bebop, but I figured all those skills would help me translate into all the other music that I loved, rock, blues, funk, pop, and things like that. And it did. It really made me, a confident musician that I can really jam with anybody, and a much better teacher in how I can help my students. And so I really feel like it was worth it, but it was definitely challenging, and considering that I was definitely one of the older students, because when I got into ASU, I was about 29. And I was in classes with 18, 19, 20-year-olds, and there was definitely a disconnect, like, oh, who's this old guy? But a 9-year, 10-year gap between people, I actually noticed, was pretty drastic. So it was very difficult for me to connect with people. And at times I felt very lonely. Now, I know other people have gone to music school. If you're younger, you may find your crew, your connections with people, and fit right in. For me, it was just kind of like I was at a later stage in my life, but I figured I got to do this now, because if I don't do this, I don't know what's going to happen, and I really have a passion for music. So really all the things that I gained, I think if you're a good student, if you kind of put in the work, if you kind of follow what they're telling you to do, if you have a thick skin, and you're really dedicated, I think the things that you'll take away from music school, are well worth the price. However, they don't teach you things about real world application, and those are things that I had to learn elsewhere, because music school can kind of seem like a bubble in that world. So you don't learn everything, but I think, really enhancing your musicality to the next level, you may be able to find a teacher who can guide you through that and really customize things for you on a specific level. And maybe you don't want to go through all the things that you have to go through in music school. And, you even have to take other classes. You have to take other credits that are non-music related. So it's not just all music in most cases. So, at the end of the day, for me, I'm really glad that I did it. It was a struggle, but it kind of shaped me and hardened me to become, the confident musician who I feel like I can jam with any musician, become a much more higher level teacher so I can really refine my teaching and help students with their specific goals, particularly improvisation and creative music, which are my specialties. And overall, I'd say, yeah, I would do it again, but I know it wouldn't be easy, and not to expect it just to be, just an easy path. It really is difficult, but when you come out on the other side, to me, I'm glad that I did it. So just reflecting on that, I learned a lot from my own thought process. Would I do it again? How would I advise somebody in the future? What would you expect? What are the classes like? If you want to know more about that, more specifics on any of this stuff, what do you do in classes? What do you do in lessons in music school? What's it like playing in a combo? How should I prepare for an audition? Or, how can I, find a teacher that kind of gives me a music school kind of experience without all the hassle or anything like that. If there's anything that you can think of that I can provide some information to be helpful to you, please let me know in the comments. And I hope you found this video helpful and insightful. And I'll see you guys in the next video. Thanks a lot. Bye.